Duskmourn is coming to MTG Arena in about a week, and with it brings the potential of a turn 2 kill, both in standard best of 1 and best of 3. And we're going to go over some updated mono red or red based aggro decks. We're going to be focusing on 2 today. They can be taken to best of 1, or I have sideboards available as well for best of 3. For best of 3, always, like when you're doing a brew, the sideboards may change because it's kind of contingent on obviously what you're playing against. So this is kind of a day 1 sideboard choice. So we are going to look at the Rakdos Fling variant. It's basically mono red with the Calicel sword, and then there's the Gruul version, which we're going to be looking at as well. And I'm going to share some thoughts on a couple other cards that could be considerations for both these decks. For my background, I play a lot of mono red. It's my favorite deck. Upwards of number 1 mythic in the past, with variations of mono red through arena formats. But we are going to take a look, and we're going to start with the mono red fling. So let's start off with the combo and how it's going to work. So Leyline of Resonance, 4 mana, but we're never actually going to ideally be casting this for 4 mana. We want it in our opening hand. If it's in our opening hand, we get to cast it and put it into play for 0 mana. Then, whenever a creature we control becomes the target of an instant or a sorcery spell, you get to copy that and you can redirect it. So this enables us with the Cacophony Scamp or potentially Heartfire Hero to kill them on turn 2. The ideal line is you go Leyline, you have Scamp in play. Scamp will then on turn 2, what we do is we target it with Monstrous Rage, and then like something like Turn Inside Out or just another one of these effects. It gives enough pump to deal 22 damage, I believe it is. And then it could kind of, through the fling, deal the 22 actually. So how it would work is you get +5 effectively because the roll tokens don't count, like they don't stack. So it's +5, so it's 6 damage. And then you get another 6 from this, so it's 12. 12 trample, and then it could fling itself for another 12 damage. So that works that way there. So you get some big damage that would come across. So it's a very explosive deck. Obviously, you do have to have the Leyline in hand. But even just for the fair play, if you have Leyline, even if you don't get the turn 2, copying any of these effects is very strong. In terms of the new card, in addition, the Rakdos version doesn't have like huge amounts of new cards in the main board. Turn Inside Out is another one of these instant speed effects. 1 mana, target creature gets +3/0. And then when it dies, you manifest Dread. So this is basically look at the top 2 cards of your library. One of them, put 1 onto the battlefield face down, and then the other goes into your graveyard. So you get kind of a creature behind afterwards. This is replacing Mirren Battle Blade, whatever the artifact is, because that's an artifact. This is an instant, so it triggers the Leyline. It also gives us some redundancy. If they kill something, you at least have a creature come around. Still playing a split with Felonious Rage because this can give haste to our creatures that don't normally have haste. 3 Might of the Meeks, 4 Monstrous Rage, just to give trample kind of coming through. Then we have the Calicel Sword, which can fling stuff. Obviously, Heartfire Heroes, Emberheart Challengers, Swift Spears, and Slickshot kind of remain in the deck. So nothing huge in terms of changes there. In terms of the mana base, we did get a new set of dual lands, and there is a Rakdos dual. However, how it works is by base stat, it produces black mana, and then if you have a mountain or a swamp, it produces red mana. The problem is, by doing that, you drop down to 8 mountains, which isn't enough to consistently have that, and because it creates black mana, you really don't want just black mana in this deck. The Gruul land's the inverse. It produces red by default, and then green afterwards. So it has that upside, that always producing red when you need it. So we'll see that land be featured there. If it was the other way around, we would be playing it in this deck that gives us 12 black sources. So then we would be changing our sideboard to have things like Duress, potentially Go for the Throat, stuff of that nature. In terms of our sideboard, we can look at the cards here. We have a new card, Ghost Vacuum. So 2 of here, this is intended for Graveyard Hate. Delirium is a sub-theme of the deck, or of this new set. So we do want to kind of have some main board Graveyard Hate available. This can also, in a very late game, obviously we're only 20 lands, but you can have it, sacrifice it, and it becomes copies of the various things you exiled, but as 1/1s instead. We have removal in Obliterating Bolt. This might seem a little odd, but we have Pyroclasm here. So the numbers can vary. Like you could have 2 Pyroclasms, 2 Witch Stalkers, kind of mixed with there. Most of our creatures can just scale out of this damage. So the Prowess gets this out, Prowess gets this out. With the Valiant, you can kind of get this out. If opponents are doing like go wide token decks, smaller aggro decks, this is useful in that sense. Convoke decks, stuff of that nature. A card I'm uncertain of, but I'm kind of considering it, is Screaming Nemesis. So 3 mana, 3/3 haste. So base stats, not the best power, but got that Boros Reckoner style effect. So when it's dealt damage, we get to redirect that much damage to any target. We can throw it at our opponent's face, and they basically get an emblem that says you can't gain life for the rest of the turn. Ideally, this would be played against Domain. Now, the thing is, Domain doesn't have a lot of damage-based removal, typically. It's typically like Leyline Binding, Temporary Lockdown, Sunfalls. It's really only the Archangel or kind of forcing an Atraxa to block for that turn. So it's something I want to try out, see how it works. It's fairly reasonable in like the creature mirrors as well, like that aren't playing black-based removal. Just a way to kind of fling some damage. There's a lot of incidental life gain, so it's something I'm interested in trying out. Torch the Tower, just another cheap interaction for these like red-based mirrors. Full Forge against the heavy sweeper removal packages, and then Witchstalker Frenzy. This is just kind of the flex spot, Obliterating Bolt. Obviously, these numbers would vary depending on the configurations. If there's more 5 toughness, you got to shift up. If the Exile is more relevant and 4 damage is enough, we'll go with that there. So that's the mono red version. We're going to take a look at the Gruul version, and then there's going to be a couple new cards I want to talk about just in terms of how they potentially may fit in the future. So Gruul Aggro, very similar kind of idea. So we'll have the visual stacks, or we'll do the visual grid. So same kind of configuration, no Callous Sellsword in this version here. Same kind of creatures that we have. We have the Turn Inside Out, we have the Monstrous Rage, the Might of the Meek. With this, we have Snakeskin Veil in here. This is a protection effect, lets us better go kind of all in, I would say. Or just through the Leyline, protect us when we're trying to do a combo turn. You get to put counters on it, stuff like that. We also have Innkeeper's Talent as a way to put counters, get the Valiant, stuff like that. Still the Leyline, so you're basically adding the green cards there. The big thing is we get the better land in the Thornspire Village. For both these decks, I'm actually just going to adjust it afterwards, but we can play one of the red villages, I think, in the deck. That give like a mouse haste and you can tap it. I think one of is fine. I wouldn't go more than that, I would say. Similar concept in terms of the sideboards. We have the Ghost Vacuums. The big benefit of going Gruul is pick your poison. There's a lot of enchantments that'll be going around. This gives you an answer to Atraxa, which the red deck doesn't really have. So that's a big card of the side. We have a lot of the similar concepts in terms of the sideboard, but with addition of pick your poison. So these will be very kind of aggressively slanted decks. The big thing we want to see here is obviously how consistent is the Leyline when we're playing these games. These versions, I'm not playing the Questing Druid because you are playing the Leylines. You don't really want 4 mana spells with the Questing Druid. So instead, we're just trying to be more just likelihood of killing on turn 2, 3 as we play these games out. You can like plot Slick Shot and then just go nuts with like protection up and stuff like that. A couple cards I want to talk about. So we have Fear of Missing Out. We got FOMO. So this card's very interesting, and the reason that's not included, so it doesn't have haste, which kind of sets you back in these like super all-in aggro. If the Leyline doesn't work, this is definitely something I would kind of slot into that Leyline spot to see how it works out. It enters the battlefield, you discard a card, then draw. So if you're Hellbent, you just draw a card. And then if you have Delirium, you basically get an extra combat step, which is pretty big when you're pushing through huge amounts of damage. The thing is, you're not really consistently getting Delirium in these decks. Without the Leyline, you just have instant sorcery creature for the most part. It's going to be very difficult to get a land into play for that 4th typing. You also don't have, like other than another copy of itself, which is an enchantment creature, it's not as easy to get in. With the Gruul list, it's kind of similar. You do have a couple enchantments in Innkeeper's Talent, but you're not consistently getting that 4th type in. We would have to introduce like an artifact or see if there's like an artifact creature, something with multi-typing that could play into the deck itself. So that's kind of the reason that I'm not super thrilled with it just yet, because you don't have that 4th type readily available. If there's something like Mishra's Bauble that can fill that void, very good in that sense. Another card, so Razorkin Needlehead. 2 mana, 2/2, has first strike during your turn. Not really relevant for the most part. And then whenever an opponent draws a card, it deals 1 damage to them. So for the standard's not like huge into drawing multiple cards. You have things like Atraxa that pulls cards into hands. There can be Up the Beanstalk. There can be Innkeeper's Talent as a way to kind of refill your hand. Or not Innkeeper's, the White Talent. The problem is this just gets caught up in regular temporary lockdowns, just dies to everything. It's not aggressive enough on its own, and you don't want to be playing the nickel and dime, you know, a damage here, a damage there. You just want to overrun your opponent. In the kind of slower control games, they're usually bringing in more removal, so you don't want to just then have a small kind of creature hanging around. So that's why it's kind of out. One card I was considering for Gruul, and I like the way this is kind of statted, is this Wildfire Wickerfolk. So again, if the Leyline plan doesn't work in the end, this is kind of where we're trying first, then this provides a nice body. So 3/2 haste for 2. And then if you have Delirium, it's a 4/3 that has trample. So really good base stats. It enables those secondary copies by adding 2 things to Delirium. This, with Fear of Missing Out, could be an interesting kind of 1-2 punch, where if you maybe go a little bit more creature dense and a little bit less pumped effects, could be an interesting kind of package there, where maybe then you do keep the Questing Druids, you just lower your curve a bit and play kind of more like a Gruul creature aggro, kind of like the Burning Tree Emissary style effects. I'm actually really interested in trying this with Burning Tree Emissary to see how that plays out in like Pioneer and stuff. So that's kind of where I'm at with these decks. Welcome people's thoughts. Obviously, this archetype's not going to be groundbreaking and new and stuff like that, but it's a very popular deck, and folks usually look for kind of upgrades. This is where I'm going to be trying it out first to see how well this turn 2 combo is, and to see if, you know, are we consistently doing it? Are we mulliganing too much? Is the Leyline cluttering our hand and stuff like that? So welcome your thoughts. We'll do a couple more deck techs before the new set comes out, and we'll catch you next time. Thanks for watching.